Welcome, students. Today we will discuss Chapter 1, The Living World. How wonderful is the living world? The wide range of living types is amazing. The extraordinary habitat in which we find many kinds of organisms, whether it is a cold mountain, deciduous forest, ocean, freshwater lakes, deserts, or hot springs. The ecological conflicts and cooperation among the members of population and among population of a community or even at the molecular traffic inside a cell make us deeply reflect on what indeed is life. There are two approaches to give the answer of this question. The first one is a technical approach where we seek to answer that what living in comparison to the non-livings, while the second approach is the philosophical one where we seek to answer the question where we seek to answer what the purpose of life. As a science student, we shall not try to attempt answering the second question. So let us try to reflect on what is living. Living organisms can be considered as self-replicating, evolving, and self-regulating interactive system capable of responding to external stimuli. It means anything which can self-replicate, which can evolve, which can interact with its environment, and which can respond according to the changing environmental condition is considered as the living organism. There are certain criteria on the basis of which we can say what is a living organisms. These criteria are called as the attributes of living organisms. These are growth, nutrition, movement, reproduction, metabolism, respiration, irritability, and excretion. The first attribute of living organisms is the growth. All living organisms being grow in size. Some non-living substances also grow in size. But growth in non-living substances happens because of the accumulation of matter from outside, while growth in living organisms takes place because of the internal processes, maybe due to the formation of new cells, maybe the elongation of cells. But growth cannot be taken as a defining property of living organisms because different organisms shows different pattern of growth. For example, plants shows continuously growth throughout their lifespan due to the process of cell division, while animal can grow up to a certain age. Unicellular organisms also grow by the process of cell division, but up to a certain extent. Sometimes increase in body mass is also considered as growth. Non-living objects also grow if we take increase in body mass as a criteria for growth, like mountains, boulders, and sand mounds also grow. But their growth takes place by the accumulation of material on their surface. The next attribute of living organisms is the reproduction. Now, what is reproduction? Reproduction is the process by which living organisms produce the organisms of its own kind. Different organisms reproduce by different methods. Like some organisms can reproduce by the process of asexual reproduction, while some organisms can reproduce by sexual reproduction. But again, alone reproduction cannot be taken as the only criteria for the organisms to be known as a living, because some of the organisms reproduction may not be present, like mule and hiney. The next attribute of living organisms is the metabolism. Various biochemical reactions which takes place in the body of living organisms are known as the metabolic reactions. It is further divided into two types: anabolic reactions and the catabolic reactions, or the anabolism and catabolism. During the process of anabolism, a new substance is formed from the old substances. The example of anabolism is photosynthesis, where green plants can synthesize their own food by the process of photosynthesis. And the example of catabolic reaction is respiration, in which food material break down in the presence of oxygen to produce energy. The next attribute of living organisms is consciousness or response to external stimuli. The most important and complicated feature of all living organisms is the ability to sense their surrounding or environment and respond to this environmental stimuli, which could be physical, chemical, or biological. For example, plants respond to external factors like light, water, temperature, and other organisms. On the other hand, animals they also respond according to the change in the environmental conditions. Human being is considered as the only organism who is aware of himself. That is, they have self-consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is considered as the defining property of all living organisms. The next attribute of living organisms is the cellular organization. The body of all living organisms is made up of cell and their products, and it is the defining property of all living organisms, no matter whether it is a unicellular organism or it is a multicellular organisms. But the body of all living organisms must be made up of cells. The next attributes of living organisms is nutrition. All organisms show different kinds of nutrition in which either they are able to produce their own food or they obtain their food from some other organisms. But again, it cannot be considered as a defining property of a living organisms alone. Some other properties like locomotion, respiration, irritability is also considered as the attributes of living organisms. Hence, on the basis of this, we can say that living organisms are self-replicating, evolving, and self-regulating interactive system capable of responding to external stimuli. Biology is the story of life on Earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on Earth. All living organisms, present, past, and future, are linked to one another by the sharing of common genetic material, but to varying degrees. Now, why it is necessary to classify organisms? Need for the classification of living organisms, that we will discuss in the next part of our video. Thanks for today.